analysis of the Hindu newspaper dated 22nd January of 2020 of Hyderabad edition. The first article for discussion is taken from the page number 1 and 12. The article here is talking about the respondents who can fill the census data online this time. For the first time, they have introduced such type of features. Before going into that, let us see in detail about the census 2021. Right. So this census 2021 is going to be conducted in two-phase manner. In phase 1, which will be conducted from April 1st to September 30th, will mostly calculate about the house listing and housing census, whereas the phase 2, which will be onset from this February 9 to 28, will have this population enumeration. Right. Coming to the census exercise, this is the largest administrative and the statistical exercise in the whole world given the population of India. Next is that the confidentiality of this data is guaranteed by the Census Act of 1948. Through this act, there is a lot of confidentiality. Whatever the details are being collected by the enumerator officers will be protected through the Census Act of 1948. So this law specifies both for the public as well as the census officials for non-compliance or violation of any provisions of this act. Coming to the uniqueness of census 2021, this is the 16th Indian census, and this is for the first time it is called as a digital census because it will be recorded online, and they are going to do away with the paper retention. Another first to its kind, it is like for the first time they are going to mark it as a third gender inclusion. Otherwise, in the previous gender they were marked as others, but from this census they are going to give it a name called as third gender. Coming to the another first, it is first ever census to be conducted in a mixed mode. That is, first it can have an access through the mobile app which is generated inbuilt by the Registrar General of India, and second one is going to be the self enumeration. This self enumeration is related to the second phase, that is to the population enumeration, whereas such type of self enumeration is not available to the first phase, in which there will be house listing and housing census. So in this population enumeration, the respondents will have an option to fill the details on their own. Right. So for this purpose, once the respondent can register online and he can fill the details. Once he has filled the details, he will be provided with the reference number. So when the enumerator comes here for the registration under the Census Act, they can just give the reference number to the enumerator. For this purpose, around 30 lakh enumerators who are mostly belonging to the government officials or government school teachers will be assigned the responsibility of collecting the details of about 650 to 800 people through the both online and offline. So this process of self-enumeration option, however, will be not available for the phase 1, in which they will be taking the census about the house listing and the housing census. Right. So usually this is in context being feared by the many people because of its relation to the NPR, that is National Population Register, which is being objected by the several non-BJP ruled states. But the Kerala government also took a decision that the state government will fully cooperate with the census 2021, but they will not work with the things related to the NPR. As told earlier, NPR is nothing but the registration of citizens who have been living in that place for the 6 months, and also the one who has intention of living again for the another 6 months, they will be registered under the NPR. But yet, because this NPR is being related to the NCR, that is National Register of Citizen, and it's linked to the CAA, that is Citizenship Amendment Act, lot of states are showing reservation about the NPR as well as the NCR, whereas all the governments are supporting the census to 2021, but yet they may be trying to link the NPR as well as the census here. So in order to do away with such type of fears, the Ministry of Home Affairs said that 2021 would be the first ever census which will be conducted through the multi-mode, that is mixed mode, using the mobile app as well as the self-enumeration. And time and again they have mentioned that giving the details about the NPR are again voluntary. It is up to the citizens whether they want to answer a particular question or not. The article here is talking about how exactly this deadly coronavirus is transmitted, because this coronavirus belongs to a large group of viruses that are usually common among the animals. So that is why the scientists are calling it as zoonotic. That means that the present virus is being transferred from the animals to the men, right? So this coronavirus can be from mild to moderate upper respiratory tract illness. Unless a person is belonging to a group like children or the less immune people, it can sometimes leads to the pneumonia also. But yet, not only that, some coronaviruses that are very deadly in nature, example MERS and SARS, all this about the coronavirus we have discussed yesterday. The article here is also talking about travelers who are coming from the Wuhan region. They have to undergo the thermography or the thermographic test, right? Coming to this infrared thermographic tests are nothing but infrared imaging signs. This thermographic will have cameras which can detect the radiations in the long infrared ranges of the electromagnetic spectrum. That means that as the radiations in a particular body increases, so will be the temperature will be increasing. So when a warm blooded people are kept against the cold kind of background or the surrounding, they will show the amount of temperature that is increasing. So by this one can make or kind of detect if there are any kind of such type of temperature variations in a person. Through that, maybe we can discard the person coming into our country, saying that he must have a capability of spreading the virus. So they are using thermography test this time, or the thermo screening, how it is called as. Now this thermo screening is popularly used in the defense also, because when even in the day and night you can actually view by seeing the temperature, you can know if any person is present in that area or not. The same way they will use the thermographic test in order to know if some virus is present in them. If some virus is present in it, then it will show kind of radiation, through which radiations emitting will lead to increase in the temperature, and such type of temperature will be screened thoroughly and know if that person has a capability of spreading the virus or not. The article here is talking about the Hawaii telescope, which wants India, which is a co-builder to this Hawaii telescope, wants it to be shifted out of the proposed site. The proposed site here was Mauna Kea, which is a dormant volcano within the island of Hawaii. Right. India, it is a partner to the construction of this largest telescope in the world, that is this Hawaii telescope. If at all it is built, it is going to be the world's largest telescope. But yet the people over there are showing a lot of resentment against building such type of telescope in that area, because this Hawaiian people have some kind of sentiment or the religious kind of beliefs on the Mauna Kea. So they are resenting such type of building of proposed telescope. Now the Indian government is asking them to move away from a particular site, and they want to build such type of telescope in other site. So this, if you can see, this is called as 30 meters telescope, this Hawaiian telescope, and it is a joint venture between 5 countries, and they are all going to put around $2 billion dollars project. But yet, because of the protests for over a decade, they are unable to build this project, right? If at all this 30-meter telescope is built, it will enable the scientists to study fainter objects far in the universe, so that it will give an information about the early stages of the life on the evolution of universe. So not only just the evolution of the universe, but also it will give a finer details of not so far away objects like undiscovered planets and other objects in the solar system and planets around the world, right? So here the 5 countries here, they are referring to Canada, Japan, USA and China. They're all the partners in terms of monetary as well as infrastructure aspects of the 30-meter telescope. So the level of contribution will determine the amount of viewing time or slots that the member country scientists can get on the machine, right? That means that because India is in a given year stands to get around 10% of the available slots. So the proposed site is considered very sacred to the indigenous Hawaiians, and also the too many observatory for one more such massive establishment to come up. Many of groups have contested the site, right? So the issue has been litigious from since 2014, and in 2018 the Supreme Court of Hawaii gave permission for the construction to proceed, but the project's proponents have not made progress because it has been again and again being restricted or obstructed from the construction, right? So the project has delayed for nearly 5 years and should have begun around it by 2025, but because of such delay and all, now the Indian government has told that they want to move away, they want to just move away from this particular site of Mayokia, and so that wherever the best site, wherever it is possible, they can build up this observatory and they can reap the benefits as soon as possible. Earlier, even a site in Ladakh was selected so as to host this 30-meter telescope, but somehow they felt that the Mauna Kea was considered as a superior site due to the imaging possibility it offers, right? So the stable weather and also because the necessity infrastructure in order to manage the telescopes, they felt that Mauna Kea would be the better when compared to the Ladakh. So next possibility is that they may consider something around the Canary Islands of the Spain in order to build this telescope. Another important news regarding the same science and technology is that India is in a preliminary discussions to be part of the East Asian Observatory Consortium. Right, this East Asian Observatory Consortium was formed by the East Asian Core Observation members for the purpose of pursuing the joint projects in astronomy within the East Asian regions. So, this is a consortium of around 8 countries committed to build large telescopes and also to pool the resources. For this purpose, India is also thinking in order to join this observatory. The article here is talking about the yesterday plea that the Supreme Court has given its judgment against the petition which was filed by the Prashant Bhushan, asking them to have a stay over the electoral bond scheme which was started by the government. This electoral bond scheme allows the people to give the amount of money to transfer it anonymously to the each political party by buying the electoral bonds, right? So in 2009 judgment, the Supreme Court has asked the political parties in order to give in a sealed cover to election commission about the funds they have received through this scheme and their names, right? And when such thing was going on, even then it was challenged. That time, because of the limited time the court had and because of the huge issue that was involving the Supreme Court has declined to give a stay order on that. Citing the same example, now the Supreme Court in yesterday's judgment also say that because the earlier court has declined to give a stay on the present scheme, it is also not ready to involve the electoral bonds, right? And it has said that because already the Supreme Court has asked the political parties to give a sealed cover thing to the election commission, so now they are asking that within this time they can do the same thing, right? That is really contrary that we do not expect from a court, because already by the time that they have given of 2 weeks, the Delhi government elections will be done. So the major aim of this electoral bonds was to fund the Lok Sabha elections, but now they are even using it for the state assembly elections. Given such type of anonymity and it may lead to binami kind of acts, not only election commission but also RBI has said that such type of bonds is not healthy for a constitution which guarantees the right to vote and also it guarantees the right of voters to be informed. So such type of anonymity in the bonds is what is not taking away this whole spirit of the right to vote. And so now Supreme Court asking them to refraining from giving a stay order will actually involve lot things, because every time the elections are coming, we are seeing that such bonds are being used in a very major way. So that will actually defeat the purpose of having a free elections. So it is better the more sooner the government gives a stay order on that, and actually comes out with the thing called as anonymous kind of votes that they are giving in the electoral bonds, so that once the anonymity goes, the people can make an informed choice about whom they are voting and how this particular political party is getting funds from. The article here is actually trying to argue about the public protests which are taking place in our country, especially after the coming of Citizenship Amendment Act and the National Register of Citizens, right? So if we can see, on the whole, this public protests are nothing but are a hallmark of a free and a democratic society, right? Their main logic is that voice of people must be heard. Like whosoever are protesting regarding whatever the situation or the act they want to protest, they want their voice to be heard by the people who are making decisions in the parliament, right? But if you can see, from the time such type of protests are taking place, the government is on a hurl in order to suppress such type of protests. They are totally giving a different type of names to the each protest, calling sometimes anti-national or trying to beat hatred and all. But if you can see, whole of the public protest is guaranteed within the Constitution of India, as right to freedom, expression, association and a peaceful assembly are necessary. So any kind of arbitrary restraint on the exercise of such rights, like issuing of section 144 and all, shows like the government here is intolerable. It is unable to tolerate the freedom of expression which is guaranteed within the constitution. So this shows that the government is not able to discuss, or it is not in a capacity to discuss, deliberate or debate or listen to what exactly the people has to say, right? But yet again and again putting such kind of unreasonable limitations on the protests shows that the how government is actually allowed to take away the rights of people. If you can remember, this government is nothing but a temporary, for a temporary time it is given to do the governance in the country, right? So this type of temporary people, if they are trying to take away the most spirit of the constitution, that is when it brings about the ear to the constitutionalism, as well as the basic spirit of the constitution for which it was established. But yet, just like how the other third organ of the government, that is judiciary, which actually oversees such type of things, has properly reiterated that right to protest is an fundamental right, right? So any person who is actually trying to read this kind of article 19 of the Indian constitution, which guarantees freedom of expression as a fundamental right, but one should understand that nowhere in this article has the protest been mentioned anywhere. So it is like usually people mistake it that such type of protest is not available. If you can see the relevant article here also, like example, the freedom of speech and expression which is guaranteed here, one may mean it like everyone has a right to express like personal opinion. Maybe that may be bounded only to the film or the condition of the city they inhabit and all. Whereas coming to the form of association or the forming of unions, it may feel like just formulating some kind of regulating clubs as the professional associations or the societies. Whereas to assemble peacefully and without arms, it may mean like right to have a picnic or a park, participate in the religious festival such as Kumbh Mela. So all this shows kind of very narrow kind of expression that is being given to this novel constitutional right, that is right to express, right? If you can see here, we should not think like freedom of speech only restricts us to tell our opinion on the film or about the city they are commenting on. Here it means that they have a right to free speech and expression transforms into right to free express opinions as on the conduct of the government, whereas the right to association to coming to the right to form the association and unions will actually involve for a greater purpose, that is so as to collectively challenge the government decision, and which may actually even aim or peacefully and legally to displace the government itself, right? Not just merely checking abuse of power or the wrest power. This is the basis of any multi-party system, right? Now in India we know that in the multi-party system usually such type of things should be done by the opposition party, where it can actually put as a balance or a check on the ruling party if it is becoming very arbitrary, right? But yet because of the not very strong opposition at the center, now the onus has fallen upon the people to in order to come out and protest for their own rights. Now coming to the assembling peacefully without arms involves any kind of political parties and citizenship bodies, that may be even the university based student groups, to question and object to the acts of the government by demonstration, agitations, and public meeting. But in short, each of this right has two interpretation, where you can think of novel interpretation like speech, or speech means just talking about the city, or you're expressing your thing on the film. But that is not the case. This type of speech of expression, whatever is guaranteed on the under the article 19, does not mean that even if the protest word is not mentioned in it, such type of things, protest, whatever the children, students and the other political parties are doing, are anything contrary to the one which is given in the constitution. This only just means the interpretation, and interpretation depends on the government which is able to tolerate. The more tolerant it is, the more broader kind of concept can be accepted through the same constitutional rights. But if the government is becoming intolerant, the same things which are guaranteed in the constitution can be narrowed. So on the whole, if you can see, this democracies everywhere in the world has two core political rights. One is that right of every citizen that they can freely elect anyone in order to form a government. But they also have another right in which, if the citizens are again dissatisfied with its performance, they can actually vote them out of power. And this is very much guaranteed in our constitution under Article 326. Right, but yet this remains only a proper constitutional procedure to get rid of the government, and rightly so. Right, so indeed, the peaceful transfer of power is one of the greatest strengths of democracies, by short of displacing it, and as long as it is done peacefully, any form of public action to challenge the government's proposal or decisions is constitutionally legitimate, forming the second political rights, that is to in order to politically participate not only during between the elections. So on the whole, the article here is arguing about the right to protest and to publicly question and force the government to answer. It is the government which have been elected by you, so it is the government which is very much answerable to whatever you are asking for. Right, so if so, one is left speechless at the way in which current government is sidestepping issues, where the Amit Shah is once saying that NRC will be not implemented, whereas again the Modi comes and says that it is totally different kind of thing. So right, so present government is almost left speechless, especially the way it is taking the side steps, or it is trying to duck the question, or willfully trying to obstruct the attempt to discuss it. Right, so almost it has become a habit in order to take decisions secretly, like we have seen how in the Jammu and Kashmir they have taken a lot of things secretly, and the Supreme Court has asked them, in order to give away whatever the rights, their restrictions they are imposing on the Jammu and Kashmir, so that people can at least challenge it. Right, so because of such type of habit of the present government, they're taking people by surprise. They're throwing off totally different kind of challenging acts into the people. Then they're trying to campaign it that it is for a trying to justify for that purpose. Right, so now the question actually starts, if the government which has become so intolerant that it is unable to take the small public protest, how will the government which has promised sabka saath, sabka vikas and sabka vishwas? Right, so we have to, if only and when they keep listening to people and try to give them the right to give a critical about the policies that each government is bringing, that is when actually they can live up to the true spirit of constitution, as well as the most promised thing of sabka saath, sabka vikas and sabka vishwas. The article here is superbly talking about the powers of a speaker in order to disqualify the members of the house. Right, this judgment came after an appeal was filed by the Congress legislator against the Manipur Assembly Speaker for the disqualification of the minister who actually contested on the Congress ticket, but yet he has switched the sides in order to favor the BJP. The court asked the Assembly Speaker in order to decide the disqualification petition in just 4 weeks, and the petition were given a liberty even to approach the Supreme Court in case the Speaker has failed to comply. Right here, they have put up a beautiful question in the judgment now, which is given by the three-bench judge of the Supreme Court. Here, they have asked about the MLA's disqualification court case. The court has held that the Speaker who cannot stay aloof from the pressures and wishes of the political party, and the one who cannot actually keep away himself from the political party he belongs, he should not be allowed to actually become or hold the seat of a speaker. We know that here speaker becomes very neutral in the house once he get elected from the ruling party, although right, he has to actually become neutral in the sense that he can only give a casting vote. Otherwise, he does not have any kind of voting power in the house, except there is kind of tie between the two parties, right? So this shows he has to maintain some kind of neutrality, but yet in this case they have shown that a speaker is unable to keep himself aloof from the party he belongs. So the question here is, should the parliament really now should consider strengthening the certain aspects of the 10th schedule, that is on the anti-defection law, because speaker here belongs to the member of a particular party and he is also the insider of the house. So it is, should the power of being a sole and as well as the arbitrator of the house should be given in the hands of speaker or not, is the biggest question of the day today. So the question again is, should the parliament have to rethink whether the disqualification petition ought to be entrusted as a speaker, because he becomes kind of quasi judicial authority when such speaker continues to belong to a particular party, either de facto or de jure, he will be really biased in order to favor their party members. So here the question the court has asked is, this such type of disqualification proceedings under the 10th schedule of the constitution, why it should be kept within the house to a person who belongs to that house, why it should not be considered outside of the house. This is the question they have put. Now it is up to the parliament if they are going to bring about a law in order to strengthen this kind of lacuna, so as to address the constitution's 10th schedule, so that it becomes aloof from the political pressure, especially the speaker who becomes the quasi judicial in this nature. The article here is talking about the Brazil president who was going to come for our Republic Day. Yesterday also we have seen about the health model which was successful in the Brazil, and how it will aid our Ayushman Bharat. In the same context, another new article has been published. So this type of articles with the relation with Brazil is going to appear until he comes here and goes, right? That is up till maybe 26th of January we will see such type of articles relating to the Brazil. Here they are talking about the strategic partnership and the India and Brazil which are yet to sign the strategic action plan, and they're going to upgrade this strategic partnership with an action plan, and also they're willing to sign a bilateral investment treaty. This bilateral investment treaty was signed in 2015 with the coming of Modi government, when the Modi government has decided to scrap all the existing treaties, and it has signed they have brought a new model of BIT, right? So not only that, they are going to talk about, but they will also have talks on the social security agreement which was signed in the year 2019. The social security agreement is to allow the investments in each other pension funds, as well as to help the business process and encourage the flow of investments, right? In 2018, if you can see, India has invested around 6 billion $6 billion in the Brazil's economy, whereas the Brazil has invested only 1 billion economy. So it is like adding up to the bilateral trade stands at about 8 billion economy. So this whole of the strategic partnership is going to stand like a umbrella agreement. so as to increase our bilateral trade with the Brazil, especially for plans between the two countries is to increase the defense cooperation, technology sharing, as well as the logistic agreements. The whole level of things they want to take it to a next level, so that both countries are hoping to take their partnership and to build on the relationship between the two prime ministers, right? So our bilateral relationship are based in Brazil about three common goals, that is both the countries have a common global vision, and they have shared democratic values and a commitment to foster the economic growth. Very similar thing that we have such type of goals with almost all the countries, that is every country whichever has the democratic values, we want to enhance our relationship on that particular value. And of course economic growth is a pitching thing that we not only with this country but every country wants to have a common economic growth. That is the main reason for having a bilateral relationship. But the main concern here is about the climate change that the India has been pitching so much. But the Prime Minister of Brazil is known for not having such type of interest in the climate change, and that is why the COP25 of UN climate talks were rejected last year, because he is more like Trump, where he feels that climate change talks and are all just a hoax in order to bring down the developed country like US. In the same way, the Brazilian president also keeps on rejecting the scientific studies on the climate change. Not only that, another controversial thing that he is known for internationally is about the far side beliefs on the gender and orientation, as well as the rights for indigenous tribes, right? So maybe he can also face a protest in India, because the Brazil has been complaining to the WTO against the New Delhi subsidies to the sugarcane farmers, because Brazil is the largest producer as well as exporter of sugar. So maybe he can face a type of protest from the indigenous tribes as well as the people, because it is complaining to the WTO about the sugar subsidies that the India is giving. So we got to see what will happen when he comes to the Republic Day, because maybe such type of protest may not happen in his face, because this is a Republic Day event he is coming for, not to sign, not for any kind of bilateral talks in particular, but because he is going to come here on the sidelines, they are going to talk about the strategic partnership and also sign the bilateral investment treaty. The article here is talking about the Nepal Prime Minister who has made this statement regarding the pending issue between the India and Nepal. He has hinted that there are the majority governments in the Nepal as well as in India. So this is the moment that they can take or try to resolve any kind of issue, because during the coalition government or whenever the government is not very strong with the majority, usually the coalition makes lot of uproar. So it is not easy for the governments to take any kind of stern action. So hinting at the majority governments at the both end, he told that there should be kind of bilateral issues should be solved through the dialogue, and he says that Nepal is ready for any kind of dialogue in order to resolve the Kala Pani issue. The president's statements were made at the event. We know that recently our Prime Minister Modi, in a video conference, he has launched the integrated checkpost at Jogapani and Biratnagar in Nepal. This present checkpost is built with the help of Indian assistance, and during the video conference, the Nepal Prime Minister has spoken all this about the issue. Coming to this Kalapani region issue, we know that the river Kali divides the Nepal and the Indian borders in the state of Uttarakhand, and because it is the river which is dividing the two countries, here what happens is that because of the changing course of the river, usually the borders are being kind of deflated. They are not unable to trace the exact river course of the river course as a boundary. That's why there are a lot of issues that are coming between the Nepal and the India. Especially this issue has come into foray after India has published the political map in November 2019, after making the Jammu and Kashmir and Ladakh as two union territories. After that, they have published this political map, and about the Kalapani region, which was mapped into the Indian context, there was a huge uproar in Nepal. Here, India feels that even the headward tributary of Kali comes under the region of India, whereas Nepal says that only Kali River will be the boundary between India and Nepal, not the headward tributary. So, this is a small region in bordering the Uttarakhand and Nepal, is coming as a conflict between the India and Nepal, for which the Nepal Prime Minister has hinted in order to resolve the issue in the bilateral and dialogue way.